Proudly known as the City of Bridges, welcome to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. With over 446 bridges, Pittsburgh surpasses even Venice, Italy, in the number of these beautiful structures within its city limits. Along with its many bridges, 3 rivers converge in Pittsburgh to form the Ohio River. This unique geographical feature has not only contributed to the city's development, but also provides a beautiful backdrop in the city for waterfront views and recreation. Pittsburgh has long been known as a place where innovation thrives. As home to several prestigious universities and institutions, the Steel City offers an array of opportunities to learn and to grow. Its rich history as a major steel-producing city has played a significant role in shaping Pittsburgh's identity.
So we moved from Alaska, where we helped plant a church, one of the first evangelical church plants in Anchorage in 40 years when we were there. And we fell in love with church planting, but I felt like before I could go and pastor a church, I needed a theological education. I was a relatively new believer at the time, had only been following Jesus for a couple years. And so we had to make the really difficult decision to leave Anchorage, a place that we still love,
absolutely,
to go to Fort Worth, where I went to Southwestern Seminary for several years. And while I was there, I was serving in the local church as a college and young adult pastor, and I had the title, but wasn't really a pastor. I hadn't committed to that yet. I told my wife I didn't want to be a pastor. This was the last thing I wanted to do. But while we were there at Rush Creek, serving in that ministry, listening to one of my students teach on the book of Jonah, he was talking about running from the call of God. And I came home that night and I told my wife, I was like, I have something that I have to tell you. Mm-hmm. And she was like, who is she and where is she?
I definitely panicked. I did.
I was like, no. I feel like God has called me to be a pastor.
Yeah.
And it was something that I had been wrestling with and running from for several years.
I wasn't aware of. Yeah.
So there in Fort Worth, I submitted to that call to pastoral ministry. And not long after that, God began to create this angst in our heart to begin to transition. We couldn't really define what it was. We didn't even know where it was.
Right.
We just knew that it was not where we were. And when we came to the city, some of the criteria was because we had been in part of church planting in Anchorage, we knew how isolating it was and how difficult it can be for families. And so the cities we were looking to plant in, it was necessary for us to have a network of churches that could encourage us, support us, hang out with us. And we wanted to be in a city that had a vision for multiplication because we ourselves want to be a equipping and multiplying church. And we wanted it to be a city where our family could thrive. Pittsburgh checked all of those boxes. So in August of 2019, we moved from Florence, South Carolina to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to plant New Horizon Church.
We had 3 families move to Pittsburgh to help us plant this church. And so we arrived first and started to meet with what we call our core team via Zoom and have core team meetings until they arrived here. And then we started just to, the simplest way is to get to know your neighbor and get to know that your community where you work, play, and live. And so we joined the Y. You started to go to local coffee shops and restaurants and just build community as anyone does when they're new. We have intention with the places that we go and the conversations that we have. And so we were really intentional about that. And so we kind of grew our core group and started to meet in our living room. Just started to build community and friendships. And then our core team grew. And we were in our living room with quite a few people. And then Pastor Bill came that one Sunday and he was like, y'all have got to find a new space. Y'all are outgrowing your living room.
During our core team sort of phase as a church, when we were meeting in our house, we met a single mom named Jan Held, who was a neighbor down the road. And when we met her, she was seeking God. So she was practicing yoga as a form of spirituality. She was very open about that. But she began to hang out with us.
She has a son, our son, Samuel's age.
I can remember many conversations over the course of several years of just trying to figure out where Jan's faith was. And I remember one summer sitting with our small group in the park, and Jan, where's Jesus? Is he on the outside of your life? Is he in your life but influencing your life, or is he Lord of your life? And she's like, he's certainly influencing, but he's not the Lord yet. And that was about a year ago. And then just a couple of months ago, we met with Jan again. She just began to exhibit what I thought was like fruit of the Spirit. And both my wife and I were like, man, we need to talk to Jan again. And so would have been February, March timeframe of this year, we talked to Jan and we said, Jan, where are you with Jesus? We walked her through the word, and like she joyfully, like no tears, just straight joy. Like she was giddy, laughing.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm following him.
Yeah.
He's my Lord. I want to
Yep.
give my life to Christ. And
Yep.
so Easter 2024, we got to baptize Jan, and that was a 4-year-long relationship
Yeah, that was, yes.
with her. And now she's a sister in Christ and a partner of our church.
Yeah.
Earlier this year, I found out that this church, old Mars United Methodist Church in Mars, Pennsylvania, a little history behind this. What's interesting about it is in 1844, 4 Methodist families founded this church in a barn
Wow.
just outside of this area. In the late 1800s, 1880 timeframe, they finally had enough money to build this building. We're sitting in the front half of it now. And so when we began to look into this building, we found out that actually the borough of Mars owned it. So to say that it was a God thing is an understatement.
Yeah.
That you actually have a borough leaders that want a gospel-centered church in their community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Where we are today, when I said earlier, was not a possibility, is, to be quite frank, a result of our own philosophy of ministry and missions as a church. What drew us to Pittsburgh was this insight that for years, churches have either unsuccessfully stuck in Pittsburgh, or they had come to Pittsburgh and grown healthy, but had done very little with regards to seeing other churches started in townships around Pittsburgh.
Years after settling in the Pittsburgh area, God is continuing to use Will and Erin to reach their neighborhood with the gospel. New Horizon Church has recently sent out 2 congregations to form new churches. In fact, all around the city, church planners and their families are embedding themselves in different communities to leverage their situations for eternal impact. Meet Josh.
Hey, I'm Joshua, the lead pastor of the church at Mon River. We're an inner city church plant here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I serve alongside of my wife, Angela, and we have 4 young boys between the ages of 8 and 7 months. Back in 2018, I was serving on staff at a church in the Louisville, Kentucky area, and God burdened our heart for missions. And that eventually led to us considering church planting, and we were particularly burdened to go where people weren't going. And that's when we discovered Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we found that it's a really cool city, a very family-friendly city, but there's also a lot of need for more healthy churches. And it's one of the most Catholic cities in America, but even among the Catholic churches, they're merging 4 to 1 across the city. There's church buildings all over the city, but many of them have been empty for decades. We moved here in August of 2019 and began building relationships in the city and learning more about Pittsburgh. And 6 months into us being here, that's when COVID really slowed everything down. But in God's grace, we had the opportunity to go deeper with a few people and began hosting Bible studies in our home. And then once COVID began to lighten up, we started once-a-month services, and then on Palm Sunday of 2022, we officially committed together as the church at Mon River and began weekly worship services. And we've intentionally sought to be a multicultural and multi-generational church. Most of the people who come on Sunday morning were people who were unchurched just 3 years ago. We've had many people come to worship with us on a Sunday morning that had never stepped foot in a Christian worship building ever in their life. And it's such a great joy to tell people the good news of Jesus for the very first time. But this also requires a lot of patience and a lot of endurance. One thing that I'm trying to do to make every day count is to intentionally be out in the community as often as possible. One thing I do for that is to work out in a local coffee shop one day a week. I could be much more productive studying at home in my office, but now this gives me the opportunity to meet people. And there's several people who come into the coffee shop that will regularly see me working there, and they'll come and say, "Hey Joshua, what are you preaching on this Sunday?" And I get to practice my sermon there with these people in the coffee shop, and really turns into oftentimes an hour-long Bible study there at the coffee shop. And another thing I do is regularly go for prayer walks multiple times through a week throughout our neighborhood. And I could just pray at home in my office, but this gets me out into the community and I get the chance to meet people. And I'm regularly asking them on my prayer walks how I can pray for them. And this is oftentimes giving me opportunities to tell them about Jesus.
Through their presence in people's lives, the Cole and Paige families are making every day count. How about you?